All right, everybody. I am excited to have back Will Buchik with us, and he's going to help us break serve in doubles today. So, first learned about you last year from one of my students who came to one of my camps. And she's like, "You got to have this guy Will on. He's so good. He knows so much about doubles. It's really smart stuff." And so, anyway, we were happy to have you last year at Tennis Con 7. We're happy you're coming back for Tennis Con 8. And I'm really looking forward to this because I think a lot of people will learn a lot. If you guys are out there, make sure that you say hello to both of us in the comment section. Let us know where you're from. If you're watching some Wimbledon at the same time. Yeah, great day for tennis. Wimbledon on in the background. Well, thank you so much for tuning in. I see we already got like a decent little crowd here. So we'll just, before we get into the doubles top comments here today, or the topic, have you been watching Wimbledon? What are your thoughts on everything that's going on so far from what you've seen?
Yeah, I have been watching. The weather's been a little bit of an issue, more so for the doubles draw than the singles draw, because the singles players get that roof on center court and court one. But it's been really fun to watch. I mean, I feel like it's such an interesting time of the year with the transition from clay to grass and how different teams do well on different surfaces, right? So it's been really exciting to see which teams have emerged. So like Marcelo Arevalo and Mate Pavic are still in the draw at Wimbledon. They just won Roland Garros and they had a pretty slow start to the year. So they're climbing up their rankings and into the close to the top spot in the year-end race. So little stories like that is what I like to follow. And then of course I'm watching the matches as much as I can, trying to help promote them and then also just learn by watching, because I feel like especially club level players, anybody listening to this, you can, even though the pros are so much better than us, you can learn so much by watching pro doubles. You don't have to be able to hit the same serve or the same forehand, but you can still learn a lot from their positioning, their movement, their shot selection, different things like that. So I'm still doing that, and I've been doing that for almost a decade now, and I still learn every time I watch. So it's a ton of fun.
Nice, nice. I know you got that shirt, watch more doubles. So that's really good. I'm just curious, like, how can you watch the doubles at Grand Slams because they don't put it that much? Do you have a special feed, or do you just like anytime they put it on, you're like, I know they're putting it on at this time, I'm going to watch the doubles? Like, how do you get your doubles tuning in there during the Grand
Yeah.
Slams?
Yeah, this is something I need to have a whole like blog post or guide on like how to watch doubles on TV. So for Wimbledon right now, you have to have an ESPN Plus subscription. It's I think like $10 a month. So what I used to do is sign up in July and then just cancel after a month. So you pay $10 and you get to watch not only the doubles, but even the early round singles matches that aren't on the main feed. You can watch all of those on ESPN Plus. So it's well worth it. Other than that, with other Grand Slams and then a lot of other tournaments as well, you can do a Tennis Channel Plus subscription, which I think is like $100 a year, and then Tennis TV, which is just the ATP side. And then people not in the US can use WTA TV for the women's side as well. So it kind of depends on your country, but those are the main ones for the US if you do want to watch the doubles.
Yeah. First of all, I just want to say thank you so much for everybody that's on. I mean, I realize we got two like stellar matches going on right now that we're competing against. So
Yeah.
the fact that we have a good crowd and an active crowd, we are grateful. Will and I are grateful. And I see that Andrew's got a question. We're not going to answer that just yet, but I like that Andrew wrote a question because I want you guys, as you're watching Will explain how to break serve, come up with your own questions about doubles. We're happy to answer them today. That's what it's all about. Before we get into your tutorial today, I think this is a good one. Coco and Jessica have something to prove in doubles. Now, I love that Coco and Jessica as well, big stars, they love to play the doubles. Now, what makes them, have you watched them play doubles much? I know they've had a lot of success.
Yeah.
What do they do so well in the doubles court besides just being like really great athletes and players?
Yeah. I mean, that's what it starts with. Like, they're both just great tennis players, right? And similar to singles, even in doubles, the most important shots are the serve and the return. And they're both good at that, especially Pegula's return and then Coco's serve. So yeah, I've followed them, watched a lot of their matches. done some post-match press conferences with them at some of the tournaments. And I've actually recently agreed with USTA. I'm going to be helping out with scouting for the U.S. Olympic team. So I'm going to be helping them at the Olympics as well. So that'll be a lot of fun. But Coco,
first of all, that's amazing.
Yeah, I'm really excited for that. It's going to be a ton of fun. So Coco's improved her doubles game dramatically over the last 5-6 years. She's made several Grand Slam finals and then got over the hump and won in Paris last month with Katerina Siniakova, who's probably the best doubles, or one of the best doubles players in the world for sure. But she's improved her net game a lot. She used to kind of stay home and move forwards and backwards, not poach a lot, not super active at the net. And she started to do that more, and her offensive volleys have really improved a lot. So that's one area that she's improved a ton. I see we're joined here by your puppy.
Yeah, B2.
And then Pegula is just a fantastic baseline player in doubles. So one thing that translates really well from singles to doubles is those players who can step forward and take the ball early in doubles, because that neutralizes the opposing net player. And Jessica Pegula is really good at that. So she can step forward and kind of hug the baseline and take the ball early on the rise and redirect with either wing. So it makes it really difficult to poach when she's at the baseline. So they've, and then their team chemistry just from playing a lot has really improved a ton. So
yeah. Good stuff. I see Tom Nordstrom is driving in his car. He's not watching, but he's listening. So good stuff. Will's very good to listen to. Will, congratulations on that Olympic thing. Hopefully,
yeah.
I know you'll be very busy, but maybe we could even do like an update during the Olympics on what you're seeing and
Sure.
all that stuff. That would be amazing. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's get right into this. Everybody's here now. It's 12:08. It's time to get into the meat of how to break serve in doubles. And I think this is a great topic, because I do think that breaking serve in doubles, there's so many opportunities, especially 4-0 and below, to really, if you're working as a team, great opportunities to break serve a lot, I would think. Do you feel the same?
Yeah, I think there's just certain things that we don't focus on enough as club level players. And we allow the serve team to get away with certain things that we really shouldn't if we're using the right strategies and the right tactics as the return team. So that's kind of why I wanted to talk about this topic. I think we can really help people today think a little bit smarter as the return team about how to put more pressure on the server and really break serve more often and more easily.
Let's do it. So what are we going to do? Are we learning secrets today? You have a list. How are we going to tackle this today?
Yeah, I wanted to start with, let's start with mistakes. How does that sound? So
I love it.
These are some of the common things that I see at club level doubles that a lot of the listeners here today are going to tell us, or when I say some of this stuff, they're going to think, oh, I do that all the time. And these are easy things that they can help, that they can correct, and it'll help them improve. So can you see me okay on the whiteboard here?
Yeah, we've got you in solo layout. We have you in solo layout. So yeah,
turn
looking
this
good.
on. That lighting should be a little better. Okay. So the first one, this is a very simple one. So what I see all the time, so let's say the serve team is up here. You've got your return team on the bottom. The opponent misses a first serve, and the returner stays in the exact same position. And then a lot of club players have a much weaker second serve, certainly weaker than their first serve. And because this returner stays in the same position, the serve comes over, it reaches its peak, and then it drops, and they end up running forward and catching this ball down at their knees or at their ankles, and they're lifting up on the ball. So letting the second serve drop is a huge mistake, because when the opponent misses their first serve, all of a sudden you have the advantage as the return team. You should win a little bit over 50% of those points at the club level. And by staying back, you're basically letting them get away with missing their first serve. So one of the things I want people to focus on is, as soon as they miss that first serve, take a few steps forward and don't let that second serve drop down to your knees. Try to take it at its highest point, take it on the rise if you can. Of course, if you're playing at a higher level, like 5-0 plus, and they have a huge kick serve, this can be very different. But for most people listening, I imagine, are 3-0, 3-5, 4-0 players. I really want you to think about your return position a little more. And that can also apply to big first serves, right? I see a lot of people struggling to make first serves, and the opponent has a really hard first serve, or maybe they have the wind behind them, and they don't think to take a few steps back and buy themselves some time. I've played with people where I've given that tip to them after several games, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, that helps so much," because the wind is going this direction, or they have a huge first serve. So adjust your position according to the pace of the serve, whether it's a first serve, second serve, whether they have a big serve or a soft serve, or even the wind can play a factor there as well.
All right, I love that. I actually just made a video a couple weeks ago, and it was basically how to dominate all your 3-5 doubles matches, and that was one of them because I run camps. And
Yeah,
so, I mean, this stuff happens. I know sometimes when I think sometimes when we're sitting at home, we go, duh, but then those same
yeah,
people will be on the court and just not have that situational awareness. So, I mean, this does
sure.
happen to a lot of players who, have pretty good tennis IQ. And I think it's a matter of also sometimes, besides just knowing the stuff, it's building the actual habit. So make sure you're
Hmm.
practicing these kind of scenarios in your practices. Okay,
Yeah,
that was really good. Now, I think this is a good question that I want to get to pretty soon because and guys keep asking your questions because you guys always ask the best questions. We were on with Sam Jones from Tennis Express, and when we got off, Sam was like, "Wow, what amazing questions those guys had!" And this guy makes commercials on TV and everything. Like he's very well known, and he was very impressed with our audience. So returning cross court very difficult against fast serves when the server's partner takes up the center position. Down the line, also very hard technically to do, and cross court gets poached. So I think he's asking, like, what do
hmm
I do? What do I do when somebody's like really good at going to the middle aggressively and the serve is
hmm
big and down the line's hard? Like, what do you suggest is a good way to counter this?
Yeah. So I'll step back here again. So the first thing I want to talk about with this actually is kind of your mindset. So this is probably a first serve that's going in. As the return team, we're not supposed to win points when the opponents make a first serve. So the idea that you lose a point and you're like, you did something wrong, or you tell your partner, oh, my bad. Um, that's something I see all the time at the club level. And in reality, if they're making a first serve, again, you're not supposed to win that point. So it's okay to lose points. What we're looking for is to get 35, if you can get to 40% of their first serve points as the return team, you're doing a really, really good job. So that's the first thing I want you to keep in mind. The second thing is we're defending on first serve. So we're not supposed to win the point. We have to prioritize defense. So there's a few things that you can do. So let's assume whether they're playing regular formation and poaching, or they're playing I formation here. One thing you can do is bring your partner back to relieve a little bit of pressure. So if this player does get that volley, they have a little more time to react. I always like to start behind the service line when my partner's returning first serve. Another great tactic is just to lob it. Whether you're on the deuce or ad court, just find a way to get the return in play. So from the deuce court, it's really nice to be able to lob down the line because this player has a backhand volley here. The server has a backhand ground stroke, assuming they're both right-handed. If you're in the ad court, you can just lob it cross court, which gives you even more room to hit into, so you can hit the ball a little bit further. But ultimately, if they're making big first serves and they're taking over the middle of the court, they're basically doing their job, and you've just got to find a way to get it by them. And if you can't, then it may be the case that you're going to have to wait for a game when they miss a lot of first serves, and you have to really take advantage of those second serve opportunities. And one of the ways to do that is what we talked about earlier, by stepping forward and making sure you take that second serve at its highest point. But it's a really tough spot. I mean, if they have a really good server and a really good net player, it's possible that you're just going to have trouble breaking that particular server, and you have to focus on the other players' service games a little bit more.
First of all, I just want to acknowledge Donald Newport, who's come to a lot of our camps is on, and I just want to say hello, and I see your question. We're going to get to that soon. Now, one thing I think you mentioned that was super important, and I want to spend a little bit of time talking about this, and I want to say something that I want you to follow up with it, is you said lob on poaching teams, and that is an excellent tip. And I highly encourage our audience to spend time in your practices practicing lobs, and don't practice. No, I'm not saying don't to practice, but I would practice this as not as much. That nice top spin, like Nadal buggy whip lob. That's great. Okay. But that's not going to work, especially off a fast serve, because the timing is very hard.
Yeah.
Getting in the continental grip and learning how to be very good at lobbing the ball up is a fantastic double skill. And when I run camps and I say, let's do, and I'm having everybody rally, let's do lobs and overheads every time, it is the worst part of the camp, meaning that players cannot do it. They cannot consistently lob the ball how they want to, and they cannot hit overheads consistently. So that should tell you a couple things. If you throw up a lob, guys, there's a good chance that the overhead's not going to be put away like that every time, like you're seeing on the Pro Tour. And number two is, if you can develop a consistent lob to where someone says, hey, let's do lobs and overheads, your money, and you can control the ball like this. It's not swinging like this. That's very hard to time. So what are your thoughts on that? Do you agree, disagree?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. It's something that's very under practiced. One thing that I've done in the past with some of my students on the court is just set up a target back here, and I'll do it in the singles court. So I don't like to aim for the doubles alley really on any shots in doubles because it's just too low percentage. But if you can aim for deep in the ad court back here and just set up some cones and have somebody hit serves to you and just practice this down the line lob. Or if you're in the ad court and you have a particular team you're struggling against where they're poaching all the time, you can practice either lobbing cross court, or you can go down the line here if they're staying super aggressive. But one of the things that people don't think about with the lob is their position when they make contact with the ball and how important that is. So if I'm in the deuce court and I'm returning, if I hit a lob from back here behind the baseline, this net player, think about the path the ball has to travel. So it takes, I don't know, let's say 2 seconds to get over the net and then to land back here. And that gives this player a second and a half to read my lob and get back here for the overhead or to cover it. Now, if I can hit that same lob from here, it may only take a second and a half to get over their head. So if you can take that return earlier and practice the lob from further into the court, they have no time to react and get back for this. And that's something that I've found super effective at my level, and then also at lower levels when I've taught people. If you can take that return really early, the lob doesn't even have to be that good because it's getting over their head faster. So it might even land just past the service line. But if they're hugging the net and playing really aggressively, because you took it early, they don't have time to get back to it, even if it's not a great lob. And then from there, you're in a better position to move forward to the net while they're running over here and hitting a backhand, which puts you in a really offensive position. If they're hitting a backhand ground stroke and you and your partner at the net, you're going to win 6, 7, 8 out of 10 of those points. So that puts you in a really, really good spot there.
Good stuff. Can you stay at the board? You can hear me okay,
yeah,
right?
I can, yeah.
So first of all, we got more great questions coming in. Guys, keep the questions coming in. I promise we're going to get to them. But I want to spend a little more time on this lob thing because I think that's a great tip. So you guys hear that. You clear the net person. You successfully do that. Coming in is a great play. And I think overall, people are getting better at that. The coaches are emphasizing that. I also want to talk about when the lob isn't so good. My philosophy is don't be in a rush to get out of the lob overhead rally. And I find that players don't back up enough when they hit a lob. If it's a weak lob, they don't back up enough to play defense. So they stay too close to the baseline. Like, look at the returner. If they stay in the black or just be on the line, and the
Hmm.
person has a decent overhead, they're not going to get it back. But if they can get back further in the green, and then the other partner could drop back, what are your thoughts on throwing up the lob and just staying with a lob until, like, when is it time to change out of the lob? I think people try and
Yeah.
change out of the lob overhead rally way too soon. What do you think?
Well, there's a few things going on here. So something I've been really big on lately that I've been trying to focus on myself, and it's one of the hardest things I've had to teach my players, and then also even teach myself is where my eyes are on the court. So if I'm the returner's partner and the returner is hitting a lob, my eyes need to be on this net player, and if I see them backing up and they have their racket up for an overhead, I know that I need to be backing up because I need to be playing defense. But what I find most players do is they watch the serve come in, they watch the ball bounce, their head's turned back, they're watching their partner hit the shot, and they may not see this player poach if they hit a normal return, or they're kind of looking up at the ball while it's in the air, and they have no idea if this player is bailing on the lob and letting their partner get it, in which case you should be moving forward, or if they're moving backwards for the overhead. So you really want to have your eyes on the opponents in that case. And then, of course, if this player knows I just hit a bad lob, they do need to be backing up to defend it as well as possible. Does that kind of answer your question? Is that what you were talking about?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Okay, before we go into another one, this is a good question. And then somebody said, "Yeah, that's a great question from Lisa."
Hmm.
Andrew said, "Key question from Lisa." So I think we should go on this. If your partner is getting you killed at the net, what is a good conversation to have with them and the best way to defend? So your partner is just, not comfortable with the net, getting you all kinds
Hmm.
of trouble. What do you do?
Sure. So I assume they're talking about you're the returner's partner. This net player might be really aggressive. Your partner can't get it by them. You have a few options. One thing and this goes back to studying the opponents and kind of where your eyes are. One thing that I like to really focus on is that server's partner when my partner's returning, and notice not only their movement when my partner throws up a lob or when they hit a return cross court, and I'll move back and forth accordingly, but also their positioning in terms of where they start. So if they're playing really close to the net and I'm getting killed here, I'll do one of two things. I'll go back and tell my partner, hey, I've noticed they're playing super close to the net. What do you think about trying a lob return down the line? And this is a different lesson that I have some blog posts on, but you don't want to be coaching them. You want to be asking them and having that
Hmm.
conversation. So don't tell them, lob the next one down the line. Say, what do you think about, or are you comfortable with? And a lot of players aren't comfortable with that lob return because, like you said earlier, they don't practice it enough. So in that case, you might just play two back, come back to the baseline and make this player volley through you. And a lot of times what'll happen is they'll either miss a few volleys because they don't have you up there as a target, or your partner will start hitting better returns because they feel a little bit less pressure since you're back at the baseline and you're not going to get pegged if they do come across here. So those are the best options. But really, my favorite is just studying this player and look for their position, their movement patterns, and try to communicate what they're doing with your partner and come up with ideas that you can do to counter that, which might be the lob down the line. Or if they're playing a little further back, you might tell them, hey, hit your return a little slower and it'll dip down to their feet. That could even work too, or with more spin if you have that skill set. So being able to study them is super important there.
I just want to say this group is amazing. We are close to 100 people on, and the chat is like blowing up with great questions. You guys are awesome. Will, you're doing a great job as well as always. I knew you would. And so I'm going to come back to you now. So we're going to exit you from the soul layout.
Okay.
So far, what we've got great questions. And then the first mistake tip from Will was sometimes on the second serve, you guys play back too far. You're not in an ideal position to attack, and so you're not really taking advantage of the second serve the way you should. So what is your next doubles mistake that you'd like to talk about so we can break serve easier?
So this one comes down to how we talk about return sides. So we have the deuce and the ad court, but a lot of us, and I don't even know where this started. I should probably research this. We call it the forehand side and the backhand side, as if I prefer my forehand, so I should play the forehand side, which is the deuce side. Um, that is not always the case, and I see a lot of teams that would improve their return ability if they switched return sides. They're both good players. They're not doing anything wrong tactically, but they have their strengths on the outside. And typically, you want your strengths in the middle. So this is more common if you have a lefty righty combo. So the club level, I see all the time, the lefty will play the ad court and the righty will play the deuce court, and they have their backhands in the middle. And when I face a team like that, I love that because I can just play everything through the middle to their backhands and come forward to the net. And they have to hit a backhand passing shot from the middle of the court. And the backhand has generally less spin, less pace, which means I get an easier volley and I get to play through the middle. So I'm taking away all their angles. They don't have an easy lob from there. But when you watch the pros, there's only one team on the pro tour that's a lefty-righty combo that I can think of that plays with backhands in the middle. Almost all of them play with forehands in the middle. So last year at my team, my 9-0 mixed doubles team made sectionals, and we had a 4-5, 4-5 combo, and the guy liked his backhand better. The girl liked her forehand better. And I told them before the match, I said, you might play with him on the deuce side since he loves his backhand in the middle so much. And they talked about it and they disagreed. So they went with him on the ad side and she played the deuce court because that's where they're more comfortable returning. But they lost the first set. They adjusted in the second set. They won the second set. And then they ultimately lost a tiebreaker like 10-8. But they came up to me after and they were like, you're right. Like, even though I return better on the ad side because I like my backhand, once the point got started, having my backhand in the middle was such a big strength for me. So I don't want people to assume because you like your forehand better, you play in the deuce court.
That's interesting. Well, that's funny because Maribon and I, we did a live stream the other day and we talked about that. He likes to return on the deuce side because he's a righty, and and I like to return on the ad side. So if Maribon and I ever play together, if we get in trouble, I think we need to think about
Try it
this.
out.
Yeah. Very, very
Yeah, it
interesting.
depends. I mean, there's no it depends on the team. I mean, this is what I love about doubles, right? There's no blanket rules that always apply to every single team. Like it might be the case that y'all are better with backhands in the middle because your returns are that much better on that side. And once the point gets started, your backhands in the middle are good enough. So it really just depends. But a lot of people, too many people, assume that they should play deuce just because they like their forehand better.
Let's go back to they're playing at Wimbledon. We're talking about the court surfaces. Like, one thing that's kind of interesting, the singles players are more and more saying all the surfaces play almost the same, even though we're going from hard court to clay to grass. Everything's kind of slower. Are you noticing, Donald wants to know, are you noticing that when you play on different court surfaces to change your position on return, and what are you seeing at the pro level? And then definitely the recreational levels and another answer as well, probably, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think on clay, the serve and stay back is a little bit more achievable, whereas on grass, it's a little bit more difficult because the volleys stay lower on grass. They get through the court a little bit quicker, so it's easier to put the ball away at the net. So you really want to get up there. Whereas on clay, you hit a volley and it kind of the clay kind of grabs it and lifts the ball up a little bit, and the other team has a little bit more time to get to it. It's kind of like playing on a slow hard court. So that's one of the biggest things that I notice. As far as like the court surfaces kind of becoming similar speed and stuff like that, that's not something I research a lot or know a ton about. But those are the big differences, I think. I think on clay and then slow hard courts, it can be easier to stay back just because you have more time and it's more difficult to put the ball away at the net.
One more question here from David. I think this is a good question because we know they can, but what are some of the mistakes that maybe recreational players make that they feel like when they try and hug the middle, like the pros, that they keep getting burned? So Can recreational players benefit from hugging the net like the pros? I would just say probably yes if you do it right, but what are people
Mhm.
doing wrong?
Yeah. Again, I mean, this kind of depends on matchups. Like I always like to hug the net, and if teams figure out to lob me, then I'll adjust and take a few steps back. Um, controlling the net is something that's comfortable for me, and it's a great way to really own the doubles court, especially own that middle of the court. Um, if you feel like you're getting burned too much, then maybe ask yourself, what's happening before you get burned down the line and see how you can counter that. So maybe you're moving when the opponent is hitting a short forehand, for example. That's probably a bad time to move towards the middle. Or maybe they really like their backhand down the line from the ad court. Not a common shot, but I've played a few players who do like that shot for some reason. So you just have to make those adjustments kind of throughout the match and kind of study the opponent's patterns and then adjust your position and movement accordingly. But if you're comfortable very close to the net, I think it's a great place to start in most matches because it applies a lot of pressure, especially if you're the serve team.
Hmm. Guys, keep the questions coming. I want to get to the next thing that we should focus on to break serve easier in doubles. What do you have for us?
Yeah, so this next one is about the returner's partner position. This is something I did a Instagram video on the other day, and it got a pretty big reaction. Even a lot of comments from some other coaches who maybe disagree with me. But again, all of the lessons. This happens a lot with my Instagram videos. I'll post a video about return sides or about serve strategy or whatever it is, and I'll have 5 or 6 comments from different coaches saying, well, in this scenario, your strategy doesn't work. So it's kind of dumb. And it's like, I know that there's always a scenario where the lesson I'm giving doesn't work. And that's one of the biggest things about doubles. There's no kind of rules that always, always, always apply. But one of the mistakes I see is on first serves. And this goes back to a question from earlier about when you're at the net and you're getting picked on. I see a lot of returners' partners standing inside the service box when their partner is returning against a first serve, and that is going to really um, give you no time to react to this volley if the serve team does what they're supposed to do, which is land a quality first serve and then take over the middle of the court. So I want you really starting a little bit behind the service line here, and that gives you more time to react to this volley. You can even play two back, like we talked about earlier. And then when they miss that first serve, assuming this net player is not super aggressive, they don't have a really big second serve, your partner's returning well cross court. At that point, you can step in. I still like to play behind the service line, even on second serves, because I'm playing 5-0, and a lot of these servers have really big kick serves going to my partner's backhand. So this net player still can be pretty aggressive. So I still like to have this time. But if you're playing, 3-0, 3-5, 4-0, and they have a weak second serve and they're able to step in that case, you can step forward.
Very good stuff. All right. What's the next one?
So the next one is it's a simple one. I feel like this is one that's more for the guys. You see, I've played players like this, and you'll see guys at the club level, at the 3-5, 4-0 level, who love to hit the ball really hard,
Hmm.
and they'll land one out of every 3, 4 hands down the line, and they'll wonder why can't I do that every time. And it's a really low percentage shot. But it's really just about going too big on the returns. So especially on second serves, if they have a weak second serve, I don't want you thinking about trying to hit a winner off of this weak second serve. I want you to think about it as a setup shot and going for a bigger target. So what a lot of people try to do is run around their backhand here against a weak second serve and blast a forehand at the net player, or go for a down the line winner, or try to go as hard as they can back cross court. But what I've found at really every level, and this is one of my tactics that I wanted to go over, but we'll cover it now, is on second serve, if you can return and volley, you're going to win a very high percentage of those second serve points. So last year I was working with a Division I team, and I was studying one of their doubles teams, and I was looking at a particular player who was actually the worst volleyer on the team. This player had the worst hands on the team. It wasn't really up for debate. But one of the things that they did is they returned and volleyed anytime the opponent had a second serve. And I looked at the win percentage, and this player had the highest win percentage returning against second serves on the doubles court of anyone on the team, because they were returning and volleying, even though they had really, really bad hands relative to other D1 college players, right? So this is something I've been teaching more and more club players to do, is return and volley against second serve. Go for a big target. Try to go for depth. Don't take them too wide to give them an angle, especially out here with a forehand. Just go for depth, push them back. And you're probably going to come up here and maybe you'll miss a volley every now and then, but you'll probably win around 60 to 70% of those points if you can make a just quality return deep through the either deuce court or ad court. And you're going to find that they miss a lot of these serve plus one shots because they feel you coming in and they feel so much pressure. So that's a great tactic that I've been teaching people that has been working really well. But back to the mistake, it's really just going too big and giving away free points, especially on second serve.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Hopefully I'm not going to take another tip down the road, but I think when I'm hearing you say this, and it's one of the things, again, I said 3-5 tennis and below. And that's a lot of tennis players out there, guys. I know we all want to be 5-0 players, but the players that I love the most, who I love to teach the most, are between 3-0 and 4-0, right? And I want to get your thought on this. I said in a video, I'm like, you really don't even need to have anything other than a continental grip if you want to win a ton of matches in doubles. And what you're saying is you're hitting too big on the return, you're giving away too many free points, and get to the net. So guys, if you're good with that continental grip, you can do exactly what he's talking about. You can chip it deep, you can bring them in short, kind of hit like that Newt approach shot like Will talks about, and make them have to hit up and get to the net. And I think that's one of the biggest mistakes that I do see people on second serves. It's slow. They feel like they need to make someone pay for that slow serve, and usually they just give away a lot of free points. And my last tip would be, if you guys do want to hit the ball on a second serve, I notice when even recreational players are able to kind of like skip through their hit, they make a lot more. Lots of people just get frozen, their feet stop, and then they just club the ball, and that's when they make the most mistakes. Any thought on this?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think one of my favorite phrases that Craig O'Shaughnessy says is, how you hit the ball matters, where you hit it matters more. So hitting it hard is not, your opponent has a weak second serve, you want to hit it hard, but hitting it hard doesn't matter as much as where you hit it. So if somebody said, it looks like Mark said sometimes less power is better, right, Pete? Yes, absolutely. Like, I would rather you hit a less powerful shot that lands 4 feet inside the baseline than a shot with 30% more power that lands at the service line. And you can do this drill, right? Like, you can have somebody go out with a basket of balls and feed to you at the baseline, have them feed really hard shots at the service line, and you hit them from the baseline. And what happens is the ground slows the ball so much that by the time it gets back to you at the baseline, even though they hit it hard coming off their racket, it doesn't affect you that much at the baseline. But if they hit a slower one that lands really deep, you're all of a sudden picking it up right off the short hop. It's a much more difficult shot. So hitting with good depth, especially against teams who serve and stay back, which is most people at the club level, is going to be much more important than hitting a powerful return.
Good stuff. Guys, great comments, great crowd. Let's get into our next tactic on how to break serve easy. Let's go.
So that's all the mistakes I have. Next, we can go over, let's go over our return target. So The number one return target, I'm sure a lot of people have heard this before, but the number one return target, regardless of their formation, their uh, how aggressive this net player is really just hitting a quality return through the middle of the court at this net strap. And there's several advantages of that. Number one is this net strap is the lowest part of the net. You're aiming through the middle of the court, which gives it a high percentage shot. And then also, if this player does move to the middle, you've taken away all their angles. So this is a really difficult volley for a lot of club level players, especially if you can keep it low. So that's the, 90, maybe not 90, maybe 70, 80% of my returns. I'm aiming right there. And one of the tactics that I like to use and kind of vary from here, and I do return from the ad court typically. If we'll adjust here. One of my favorite ones, and this is more on second serves if I have a little bit more control over my return, is actually to take it a little bit left of this center net strap, and I'll bait this player. So I call this tactic bait the middle. It's in one of my courses, and what you can do is get this player, if they're right-handed, to kind of jab at a backhand volley, and you can cause a lot of communication issues between these two players. So you can kind of tie this in with my return and volley tactic against second serves. If you're an ad court player, if you can run around, hit a forehand, hit it through the middle here, and you can keep it low, you'll either get them to jab at a backhand volley, or if they hate their backhand volley, they're going to leave it. And this player's server is going to be off balance, kind of running up here, and then you're going to follow it in. And there's really not much they can do with this shot here. So that's a great tactic you can use. But generally, if you're not sure where to hit your return, again, this middle net strap area is the area of the court you want to control, and it's the best return target for you.
Yeah, that's great. Kind of similar to Gigi, where she says she doesn't really like club players, especially to be going out to the alleys, because then it takes away, it gives angles and to the passing shot team.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you get in closing position, it kind of spreads your team out wide once that happens, because now
Mm-hmm.
you got to cover all the angles. So I really like that. And then I think another key thing you talked about, I really like that. I haven't heard that before. Bait the middle, like kind of challenge them to go across, especially if it's their backhand side. And two things are going to happen. They're going to go and not hit it that great, or they're not going to go. And then that could be like, I've done that many times where, it's the worst feeling. You should have gone, you lose the
Yeah.
point, and you see that your partner was
Yeah.
expecting you to hit the volley because it really was yours.
Yeah.
That can start to disrupt the trust and team camaraderie a little bit, right? When you're
Mm-hmm.
able to do that a couple times, and they start looking at each other like, dude, who's going to get that ball? Like, you really should
Yeah.
get that ball. Yeah, good stuff.
Yeah, it's a shot that both players are uncomfortable with, and ultimately, your job in doubles and singles is to make the other players, your opponents, uncomfortable, and that's a great tactic to do that. And then one of the other things you mentioned, how Gigi, doesn't like people to play too wide or down the alley because you give up some of those angles. One of the other things playing wide does is it gives the opponent a much easier lob, because that cross court lob, this is something, let's go back full screen for a second. This is
Yeah.
something a lot of people don't think about. So like if I have a second serve and I do the return and volley play, but I hit it way out here, which again, this doesn't always apply. If they have a super weak backhand, then I may hit it out here anyways. But let's say their forehand and backhand are similar strength. It's better to go through the middle, because not only do we give them this angle, they can go through the middle. They can hit a sharp cross-court angle roll, especially if they're like a lefty forehand. But they also have a lob that they can hit cross-court, and they have tons of room to hit this into. So if you remember from, I don't know, maybe fourth grade or sixth grade when we had those little protractor things. So if they're hitting the lob here, if you bring them back through the middle of the court and they try to hit that same lob, all of a sudden that same lob lands out, right? And if they try to go down the line with it, it's coming around and it's going to land long here. So they just have so much court to work with if you take them wide like that. I mean, it makes the lob a lot easier. So going through the middle, they have to hit that lob higher but shorter, which is a lot more difficult.
Good stuff. Good stuff. All right, we've got another question. Steven says, at the higher levels, 4, 5, and above, do you think serve and volley approach is the best for serving team, or serve and stay back and wait for the opportunity to move in? What do you like better?
It depends on what you're comfortable with. I know some players in my 5-0 league who are very good serving volleyers. It's what they're comfortable with. It works for them. But I've played against some of them, and I hit a lob return against them probably 60% of the time, and it throws them totally off. So, at that point, they have to make an adjustment. If you're more comfortable hitting your serve and staying back and hitting a +1 forehand and then coming forward, that's okay too. I've even seen some teams play 2 back on their second serve because the server has a really weak second serve. So it just totally depends. There's no, it used to be the case where everybody served and volleyed and you had to do that. Even at the pro level, a lot of teams don't serve and volley. On the women's side, there's only a few players who do it. On the men's side, it's almost half and half at this point. I don't know if you've talked to Louis Caillet. I know he has the numbers on it, but it's certainly over 30% do not serve and volley. Neil Skupski, he's in the Wimbledon, I think, quarterfinals now, and he's won 10 or 12 matches in a row on grass. He and Michael Venus have 2 titles in a row. He serves and stays back, and he is one of the best doubles players in the world. So you don't have to serve and volley. It just depends what you're comfortable with.
Yeah, I think another thing to think about too for Steven is, it goes on a match by match basis. Let's say that let's say Steven says, I like to serve and volley. I think you want to have the ability, so you should practice being able to serve and stay back so you have that ability. Like even McEnroe was a serve and volleyer like all the time, but occasionally he would serve and stay back. Now, one of the things that Gigi said is that the play has changed so much from when she played because of the string. So it was harder to get the ball to dip at their feet when they had, so there was less having the volley up, where now it's very easy with the strings to get the ball to have all kinds of crazy action, and it's diving at you really fast, and then you got a volley up. So Steven, look at also the style of the opponent. There's going to be some people that you play that might be like great players, but they have more old school strokes to where they're chipping, they're hitting flat. You probably can do more serve and volley. If you're playing a younger kid who's got all this spin on it, you might not be able to serve and volley the entire match. And that's one thing that happens a lot of rec tennis is you'll play like the OGs who are still like 5-0 players, but they have old school strokes. And then sometimes you play these young whippersnappers who are snapping the ball. So you might want to have to adjust on that. So
100%. Yeah, you have to really notice where the returns are landing. So if you're serving and volleying and they're able to dip it down at your feet and get that return to land around the service line every time, then you might need to serve and stay back. But if you're serving and staying back and they're returning really deep and pushing you way back behind the baseline, then you might need to serve and volley. Because if you serve and volley, that that return is crossing the service line maybe around waist level or higher. So it's going to be a pretty easy volley for you.
Yeah.
And then noticing how high it's crossing the net too is huge, because you should be able to get your partner involved, especially off of a first serve. So if it's, if they're hitting the ball cross court with a ton of depth, then play I formation or Australian formation and take that away from them, or have your partner poach and take that ball out of the air as it does cross the net.
Yeah, I think we're hitting on a golden tip here is play your strengths, whether it's serving, volleying, serving, staying back, but you need to implement enough practice time to where you have the confidence that you can switch it up at the right time. Like, for example, Novak Djokovic going for his 8th Wimbledon. So he obviously is good on grass, but he's one of the best baseliners of all time. But I would argue the year he beat Berrettini, he won because of serve and volley. And it's not because he was serving volleying all the time, but he served and volleyed on so many big points. So there's no
Mhm.
way he just goes, oh, well, I'm a baseliner, but I'm going to serve and volley and see what happens. No, this dude must be practicing the serve and volley a lot if he's going to bring it out on a big point. He's not going to go to the net most times, but when he goes to the net, he has enough reps to where he knows what to do. So practice your strengths, guys, but also know what the opposite of that play would be. And you got to be able to do that. Otherwise, you're going to be
Mhm.
too predictable out there. All right,
Yeah.
how many more of these strategies? I just want to know where we're kind of at, so I know how to ask you questions. How many do we have left here?
Yeah, we can we'll just do one more.
Okay.
I want to talk about forcing double faults. So when I was at Indian Wells, this was probably 3 years ago or so. I was working with a team, doing some scouting for them, and one of the things I noticed was that the team they were facing, one of the particular players, almost always served. They used a lot of I formation in the ad court, and they almost always served down the tee when they used this I formation. So I told my team that, and I said, hey, when you see them line up in I formation on the ad side, and this player is serving, they're going down the tee. They're not going to go wide. So take that away from them. So there's two ways I told them to handle this, and I left it up to them to decide. One way is as the player starts to go into their service motion, you can start to move this direction because this ball's coming down the tee. So that's one way you can handle it. And then you're there early, you have your forehand. Another way you can handle it is as soon as you see them line up in I formation, before they even start their service motion, you can just shift your position over here and say, beat me wide. And they probably already, the pros will come together, which I encourage club level players to do as well. Between each point, they'll call their play. They've already called T. And then this player starts to shift. And she's basically saying, I know you're going down the tee here. So they might audible or change it. And this is a less comfortable serve. You're going to force missed first serves. And then all of a sudden you get a look at a second serve. So those are two different ways you can handle it. What I see at the club level all the time, I feel like it happens a lot in the deuce court with the wide serve, is a server will love this kind of slice wide, and this player never adjusts their return position. So I've done this in mixed doubles before. When there was a match several years ago when we were playing a right-handed player who loved this slice wide, and he aced me, I don't know, 4 or 5 times in the first 2 or 3 service games. And eventually I just started standing out here, and he just could not make this serve down the tee. But I just totally took away his wide serve, which was his favorite serve. Now, that was an extreme example, but all of us have our favorite serves and our favorite kind of tendencies on the serve. And not enough returners are adjusting their position left or right to show the opponent, hey, I know what your favorite serve is, and I'm going to take it away from you. You've got to go the other direction. And of course, if they start to beat you down the tee and ace you several times there, well, at that point, they've got a really good serve. But that's typically not the case at the club level. Most of us have a particular serve that we like a lot more, and we struggle making that other one. So it's a great way to get a lot of second serve looks if you can notice those patterns and tendencies and make those adjustments to your left and right accordingly.
Yeah. I think one thing too that you're really hitting on, which I think is important, you said if they're serving aces consistently at the opposite side of what you thought their strength was, well, then you have to make an adjustment. But I think one thing too that happens is that we ask a question like, okay, I know you're going out wide. And then maybe the person hits a bomb serve down the middle and aces you. And you're like, oh, I guess I shouldn't do that again. They could tell where I went. But don't be afraid to ask somebody a question several times because then the
Yeah.
pressure mounts. Like, for example, I don't have a very confident backhand. So you might, if you maybe come at my backhand once or twice, I might go, okay, I can handle that. But if you're like, okay, hit another one and another one, another one, I'm like, oh my
Mm-hmm.
God, like stop it. So
Yeah.
don't be afraid. Even if the person passes the test the first couple times, really test it because the more you test something that is the opposite of their strength, they hate that you keep doing that to them in
Yeah.
general. Would you agree with that?
No, that's a great point. It reminds me, one of my mixed doubles partners, she's a lefty and plays in the deuce court, and she likes her backhand better. So she can rip her backhand cross court. She can redirect it down the line. But a lot of teams will start out serving wide to her backhand because they're right-handed, so they're serving wide to her backhand in the deuce court. And she hits some good ones. And then they'll say, okay, her backhand's good. Like, we need to try the forehand. And her forehand, she kind of slaps it. And if she lands one or two, they never go there again. But if she misses that first or second one, then they know the forehand's weaker. So that first forehand return dictates everything. And it's not a strength. It's a low percentage return. But she hits it so hard where if it does go in, the other team never goes back there again. And they don't ask the question twice like you're talking about. So that's a little story that kind of reminded me of that. And I think that's a really good point. And something else I wanted to bring up is that you said earlier is at the 3-5-4-0 level, you can pretty much win everything with a continental grip. Is that something you teach your players a lot? I'm curious to know more about that.
Well, yeah, I run a hyper-focused tennis camp where we work a lot on technique. And we actually start out, one of the first things we start with is the topspin forehand. But as the weekend progresses, I teach more and more the chip, how to chip and get better with your volleys. And then point out that I want you to start working this into your return games, especially off weak second serves. And the reason why I really have done that is that I know that when we look at tennis on TV, and we're always going to want the latest and greatest, we're seeing mostly topspin forehands. And to execute that, you've got to have the great thing about a topspin forehand is the faster you swing at it with good technique and the more confidence you have in your timings there, the ball is actually safer. So it's rewarding the acceleration. But if you lose confidence in your stroke or your technique is pretty good, but it's not like perfect, in the pressure moments of the match, your topspin falls apart. So I just really believe that everybody out there, since you're not going to find a lot of videos on YouTube because you guys aren't searching it. So the coaches are not going to make, how to hit an old school chip and charge forehand because it's going to get like no views. So they know what you guys are looking for. But remember, you're playing doubles out there, guys. So and we always think of a modern grip as like a semi-Western, a full Western or a strong Eastern, but that's just the forehand. So when you're playing tennis, if you want to have a good serve, that's continental grip. You want to have good volley, continental grip. You want to have good overhead, continental grip. And if you just do this, now you're getting to the net. Like if you're good at that, like if you're really good at that, I don't believe you even need a topspin forehand. And usually when I play in with my 3-5 to 4-0 people who come visit me, I just intentionally don't even hit the ball just to prove a point. And then like, why? I don't need to be slapping forehand winners against them. So I just literally chip everything. And I know that it definitely works at that level because I play against that level all the time in my drills when they come visit me. And it's super effective. And I think people would just win so many more matches if they just got better at this and didn't worry about this crushing everything like they're watching on TV.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with you. I think one of the issues we run into with like the topspin forehand is there's a lot of, and you talked about like the technique involved with it, right? The pros get to practice this for like 2 to 4 hours a day. Like we practice 2 to 4 hours a week, or maybe don't even practice. We play 2 to 4 hours a week. It's like we don't have, especially if you're a 3-5 player and you just started playing tennis 3 years ago, like to master the topspin forehand is going to be really, really difficult with only 2 or 3 hours a week. So I think, just owning that continental grip, you can get to a really high level at the club level. I even played a 9-0 mixed match last year. I never used a topspin forehand once. I had a continental grip the entire time. I served and stayed back even, and we won the match. And I was playing against 2 4-5 players, and it worked at that level. So if you can't, you're right. If you can master that, it goes back to that phrase I used earlier from Craig, where how you hit the ball matters, but where you hit it matters more. If you can have that continental grip and be able to control where you're hitting the ball and absorbing the pace of the opponent, I think it can be super, super effective. I really like that. And I would encourage people to try it for an entire practice match. One thing for me, as I've gotten older, I have less time to spend on the practice court. Like, I think I could improve my game if I had, 7 hours a week to practice tennis, but I don't. Like, a lot of my time is spent behind a computer like this. So I use practice matches to work on my chip lob return or my chip and charge off a second serve or whatever it is. And it means I lose some of these practice matches that I might otherwise win, but I'm working on those specific skills that will ultimately help me improve overall. So challenge yourself for an entire practice match, only continental grip, and see how it goes.
Absolutely. And I just want to clarify for people so that they understand is, guys, I love you. You can find a ton of videos from me on how to hit a topspin forehand on YouTube. I love to teach it. And just like having a great serve at recreational tennis, it's a game changer. Like if you can hit a heavy topspin forehand and
Yeah.
you're good at it, it's a game changer. But my point is for most recreational players 4-0 and under, there is a reason that you're rated that. And so you're in a match that's going to have nerves involved. And to understand when to chip and when to rip, if you can understand that, what percentage you need to hit. Some people need to be hitting. Like if I have somebody in front of me and I go, well, you need to be hitting about 80% of the time because your forehand's awesome and you're pretty confident with it, and maybe like 20% rip. Other people should be 80% chip, 20% rip. But the reason why, just so you guys know, in case you haven't heard me say this before, why do I think that a chip is going to do better under pressure than a rip is because just think about golf. If Will and I are on a golf course and he's standing like right next to me and I'm like, all right, I'm going to tee off, Will will be like, okay, hold on, let me move. Because he knows a lot can go wrong. I can mishit it and literally take his head off. Where if we're playing putt golf, he's just going to stand there. He's not going to be worried. I might not make the putt, but he's not worried for his life. And it's the same thing. Like, it's just an easier timing. If the racket goes slower and makes contact and the ball goes in, that's a lot easier to, again, if you're going to hit topspin well, the faster you swing, the better. So the timing is harder. And we tend to just tighten up in the tense situation. So if we feel that that's happening, why not take the pressure off ourselves and go, now this is a good time to chip and charge and still play aggressive tennis, but not have to take as skilled a shot.
Yeah, 100%. There's less potential for a technical breakdown because there's less technique involved.
Yeah.
Looks like we have some more questions here.
Let's see.
So,
Let's see. To get better, the best recommendation is 1 session per week. Don't play practice. What do you think about that?
So I recently interviewed, I don't know if you've had Greg Moran on before. He just wrote a book.
You got to send me a list on the people you think I should have on.
Okay. So I'm going to give him a shout out here. He just wrote a book called The Truth About Tennis. And he's a recreational coach. He focuses on kind of club level players. And one of the first chapters is about how often you need to play to actually improve. And I forget exactly what it was, but it was something like 2 times a week you can improve, 3 times a week you will definitely improve. But of course, the quality of your time spent on the court matters a ton. So I think that you have to distinguish between practicing and playing. And I almost, at least for the last 6 months or so, I did some last year, but I almost never practice anymore. I only play sets now. But I use those sets as practice. So like I said earlier, I'm working on specific things and losing sets that against players I probably should beat because I'm working on certain stuff. Like I'm going for a little bit bigger angle on some of my volleys and missing them because I'm trying to get comfortable hitting those angles, or I'm trying to hit a little bit bigger kick on my second serve and double faulting a little bit more because I'm working on that. So you have to kind of distinguish between practice and play, but I think you do have to practice, I would say at least twice a week to really improve.
One thing I want to point out a couple of things. You said something that is so important. You said, I will play practice matches to work on my game and lose. Now, that's hard for a lot of people to accept. But one of the best things that I've ever seen that I was like so impressed with is Carousel If you guys don't know who he is, now he's working his way up the ranks. It's Tennis HQ. Look him up on YouTube. I think he's back like in the top 400 in the world now. And he played a practice set against Taylor Fritz, who's now, I think, in the semifinals of Wimbledon. And he kicked Taylor Fritz's ass. Okay, it's like 6-2. But the thing is Carew, who's more mature and has been around the block, said, guys, don't read anything at all into this. It was just a practice set. It meant absolutely nothing. Yeah. Now, and Taylor had the confidence and the humility to say, yeah, you can post that video. Like a lot of us would say, don't post that, man. Like, don't do it. Right. Yeah. But he lost to a guy who's like, at the time was probably like 600 in the world. And he's like, yeah, post it. I don't care, because he's that confident in his game to know, like, yeah, you can post it. It didn't really mean anything. And now I'm in the semifinals of Wimbledon, where a lot of us, because it is hard, like especially a lot of recreational players are more immature than Carew. And, you know, if you are 4-0 and you lose to a 3-5, they're probably going to tell everybody at the club, like, guess who I beat today, you know, like, or, oh, by the way. And so it is hard to take that L. So how do you, how do you deal with that? Because again, it could be hard for you too, Will. Like people are like, oh man, I'm playing the doubles expert, and he's rated higher than me. Like I'm sure they want to go around and say, you know who I beat today? I beat the Tribe. I beat the Tribe today. It's like, how do you handle that?
Yeah, it comes down to what you want to prioritize. Do you want to prioritize winning this match today or getting better for your future matches? So we've got my 5-0 team made sectionals, and we've got sectionals coming up in August. So in my practice sets now, I'm prioritizing playing well at sectionals, not prioritizing winning those practice sets now. And I know to win those matches at sectionals, I'm going to be playing against players who are potentially like former D1 players with much bigger serves than me, much better forehands. But I know that I'll probably have a smarter kind of strategic advantage to them because I studied doubles so much. So I'm practicing more formations. I'm practicing more lob returns. I'm going for a little bit more risk on some of my volleys and on some of my forehands when I'm balanced and when I am comfortable, because I know I'm going to have to play a little bit outside of my comfort zone to beat some of these players, because some of them are going to be simply more talented. It happens all the time at my level where I'll play a doubles team who, if we played singles, they would beat me 1-1 in about 35 minutes. It wouldn't even be close. But I'm able to beat them in doubles because they don't study the doubles court as well as I do. And I'm able to take away certain things just through the positioning and movement. So I'm really trying to prioritize working on those things that are going to get me to play better at sectionals. So whether you have like a club championship coming up in a couple of months, or a big tournament, or a sectionals for your own league, you want to think about prioritizing playing well at that and decide what skills do you need to win matches at that, and work on those skills now, even if that means losing this practice set today. And it takes some humility, and you'll still get frustrated. Like, you know, last week I lost a set to 2-4-5 players because I was working on some different things, and I got mad at myself. Like, I was pretty upset. But you know, when you step back and think to yourself, okay, I went really big on some of those second serves and double faulted. I'm not going to be going that big if I need to win that set. So you just have to kind of think about it that way and prioritize what's most important.
Cool. I want to finish with this because I think it's important. And then we'll also remind people that they get, because this is a lot of great stuff today, and you did make a doubles return cheat sheet that I put in the email. But I think this is important because I don't want to get people confused out there. And I also want to see if you agree with me. There's a big difference between practicing for change and transformation versus sharpening your skills. And I want you to be aware of that. Will is a 5-0 player. So he has developed a lot of his skills. And so a lot of his practice is probably sharpening the things that he already can proficiently do. So if you're, again, trying to just win your 3-5 league and you're not adding anything new, you're just like working on what already works and maybe just tweaking a couple of things that are weak, I think you can get away with the 2 to 3 times a week practice and playing practice sets. if you're like, I don't know how to hold a continental grip on my serve, and you're going to go out there and try and do it in your matches after watching a couple of YouTube videos, you are going to be in a world of hurt and you're never going to
Yeah.
change. So, like, if you want to change something, you need to spend a lot of time in the closed environment, meaning that take as many variables away as possible. You probably need to practice more than normal, like you're almost like on a diet trying to lose 100 pounds. And then you can actually add something new to your game. But I don't believe you can do that 2 or 3 times a week casually thinking about it in a practice match. Do you agree or
Yeah.
disagree with that?
No, that's a really good point. And it's honestly, it's something that I'm glad you brought up because it's something I forget when I'm giving these lessons. Like, it's very easy for me to go out and like work on my chip lob return because I've got the continental forehand grip down and like the grip change between my top spin and my continental forehand. But if you don't have that skill, if it's not something you've practiced, you're right. You have to practice it in a private lesson or on a ball machine outside of the actual practice match. So when I'm talking about, right now, I'm not really practicing at all. I'm using these sets to practice. You're right. I've got kind of some of these skill sets already down for myself. But some of the things that people listening, even if you're a 3-0 player, some of the things you can practice, even if it may not be the continental grip on your serve if you don't have that down yet, or the semi-Western forehand, topspin forehand if you don't have that down yet. But some things you can practice are different serve formations. You can practice different return formations. You can practice poaching. So different things in doubles with positioning and movement. You don't have to do those in a more controlled environment. You can do those in some of those practice sets. And that means if you're working on poaching, you poach, maybe you miss the volley the first 2 or 3 times, and then all of a sudden you start to make it and you start to get comfortable. So I think those are some of the things that they can really focus on more in some of those practice sets.
Great. Will, I just want to leave you with thank you so much. And then also, if you could tell them a little bit about the doubles cheat sheet, the return cheat sheet that you've made. And so, most likely, if you're here, you got on the email from either me or Will. So, go check your email after this. If you're like, what? I didn't hear anything about a doubles cheat sheet. What's going on with that? So,
Yeah.
tell them the free gift that we've already given them. They just might not know it yet.
Yeah, this I decided to do this because it kind of goes back to something you said at the very beginning. A lot of us, I think we were talking about letting the second serve drop as the returner. A lot of us know this, and we've been taught this, and then we go out there on the practice court or on the match court, and we forget it, and we still let that second serve drop down to our knees or to our ankles. So what I did is I kind of challenged myself to put the most important things for return strategy and doubles into one sheet of paper. So you can download this, you can print it off, you can laminate it, put it in your tennis bag. And it's something that is great to look at on changeovers or before your match or between sets. And it really kind of simplifies return strategy for doubles because even me, and I teach this stuff all day long, I forget some of these things myself. So I have to have a little notepad in my tennis bag that I look at before my match or between sets to remind myself, oh, I haven't tried 2 back yet because my partner's getting killed at the net, or oh, I haven't tried adjusting my return position. Even I forget this stuff. So if I'm forgetting it, a lot of the listeners here today are probably forgetting it too. So they can check that out at thetennistribe.com/return-cheat sheet. I think you had a link in the email. And when they download it, they join my newsletter as well, which is every week on Thursdays, I send out free doubles strategy tips for club level players. Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff there, and hopefully people enjoy it. And yeah, definitely reach out to me if you have questions about it or any feedback at all. I love hearing from people from these shows. And yeah, thanks a ton, Pete, for having me on.
Absolutely. Well, great job again. Look forward to having you back for TennisCon 8. Guys, out there pretty soon, maybe a week away. You're actually going to give you guys a chance to get a free ticket so you can kind of lock in for this year and know that you're going to be notified when we start, which is going to be in late October. And so, yeah, I'm looking forward to that. And also is very excited to hear you're going to be helping out with the Olympic team and scouting for some doubles. So we'd love to maybe catch up with you again when you're doing that. That would be amazing. And keep up the great work.
Yeah, thank you, and thanks for all your work. TennisCon 8 is the eighth one. I mean, that's really impressive, and it was a ton of fun to do last year. I'm looking forward to it this year as well.
Okay. Thank you guys so much for tuning in on a very important tennis day. We really appreciate it, and have a great one out there.